Hey there, welcome back. It's funny how some days you just get caught up in a thought, like it's got you hooked, and you're just turning it over and over in your mind. Well, today we're driving deep into those very thoughts, that whole world of thought and consciousness. And get this, we're exploring where philosophy meets, wait for it, YouTube. I know,
Dark.
right? Totally unexpected. So you guys sent us some pretty interesting stuff. A snippet of this philosophical text, right, with a character called Bhadra the Inquisitor. And here's the kicker, a YouTube video, same name, Bhadra the Inquisitor. This guy, he calls himself a spiritual atheist. What are the chances? Really makes you wonder. Is it the name Padra that just draws people to these big existential questions? Or is it just, one of those weird coincidences? Either way, it's a pretty cool place to start our deep dive, don't you think?
Totally agree. It's like this basic human need to put labels on things, to categorize, especially when we're talking about something as complex as thought or spirituality. But then again, maybe those labels, they're like little doorways. You open them up and boom, deeper understanding.
Okay, I like that. So let's walk through that tour with our YouTube Bhadra, shall we? First off, this guy's got style. He's funny, throws in some pop culture references, even mentions The Matrix at one point. And he uses it all to talk about some pretty heavy stuff about consciousness, but in a way that just makes sense. His main argument: our minds are basically just this nonstop stream of thoughts and emotions. Most of it we're not even aware of, let alone in control of. And get this, he actually says, just shut up for 10 seconds. There'd still be words, but you wouldn't be verbalizing them.
He's onto something there, tapping into this whole idea of mindfulness. It's about taking a step back, just observing that space between a thought popping up and us reacting to it. And this isn't some new age thing, by the way, this idea of detaching, of just observing. It's ancient. You can find it in tons of philosophical and spiritual traditions going way back.
Right. And he calls himself a spiritual atheist, which honestly sounds kind of contradictory.
It's a paradox for sure. Like, he sees the value in the spiritual side of things, the practices, the ideas, but doesn't necessarily buy into the whole deity thing.
Makes you think twice about how we define spiritual, right?
Absolutely. And it shows how these old practices, these ancient insights, they can still be relevant. We can find new meaning in them, even with our modern way of seeing the world.
Okay, so we've got our YouTube philosopher riffing on mindfulness and what our thoughts really are. But then we've got this other Bhadra the Inquisitor, the one from that philosophical text snippet. It's like finding a piece of a puzzle but having no idea where it came from or what the bigger picture is. We don't even know what kind of text it's from, what tradition it belongs to, and honestly, that just makes it even more intriguing.
It really does. Like, we're being invited to solve the mystery ourselves.
Exactly. So to add to that mysterious vibe, I'm actually going to read this excerpt now. Just let the words kind of wash over you, see what images or feelings come to mind. Reads the excerpt aloud, slowly and deliberately, emphasizing certain phrases.
There's this real depth to the language when you say, even just this little glimpse, this padra, they seem like the embodiment of inquiry. They're asking those tough questions. And even though we don't know the text's origin, the language itself, it hints at this whole tradition of deep internal reflection. Maybe even a lineage that's all about challenging assumptions, never taking anything for granted, always questioning.
It's a far cry from the jokes and pop culture references of our YouTube Bhadra, that's for sure.
It is. But even with such different approaches, there's a common thread, wouldn't you say? They're both grappling with these fundamental questions about thought, about what it means to be conscious, like they're each holding a different piece of the same philosophical puzzle.
Makes you wonder if, despite their different styles, their different mediums, these two Bhadras, are they both on the same quest, trying to understand something essential about the human experience?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
But instead of focusing on the messengers, maybe we should dig deeper into the message. What is it about this whole mind as a flowing stream thing that's been captivating thinkers for centuries? And what can we learn from both of these Bhadras, even though they seem worlds apart in how they approach these ideas?
Yeah, it's like they're both saying, hey, pay attention to your thoughts. But the question is, why? What's the big deal about tuning into all that mental chatter?
That's the real question, isn't it? The $1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
And honestly, the answer, it goes way beyond just feeling calmer. Although, hey, who wouldn't want a little more peace of mind, right? But it's bigger than that. See, trying to understand our own thoughts, that's been at the heart of philosophy and spirituality forever, literally for thousands of years. It gets to the core of who we think we are, how we interact with the world, with each other.
So we're not just talking about feeling zen or whatever. We're talking about getting to the very essence of being human.
Exactly. Think about it. If our actions are just reactions to this, like pre-programmed stream of thoughts, like our YouTube Padre says, then where does free will fit in? Are we really making our own choices, or are we just along for the ride?
Whoa, that's deep. And it's interesting because even our YouTube Bhadra, he's got that lighthearted thing going on, but he touches on this detaching from the self idea too. He even mentions Hindu and Buddhist terms, but then he's like, nah, not getting bogged down in dogma.
Right, and that's what's so cool about it. You've got all these different traditions, different cultures, different times even, and they kind of converge on this idea that our sense of self, our ego, it's often the root of suffering, all that me stuff, the I want this, I don't like that. It keeps us stuck, like a hamster wheel of wanting and never being satisfied.
Okay, yeah. I see where you're going with this. So, by becoming more aware of those thoughts, by not getting so caught up in them, we can potentially break free from that cycle, find some peace.
Exactly. It's not like you reach this state of enlightenment and boom, you're done. It's a practice, something you keep working at. It's about awareness, moment to moment.
So, how do we actually do that? I mean, it's easy to talk about detaching from your ego when you're like having a philosophy discussion,
Uh,
but what about in the real world? Stuck in traffic, dealing with a difficult person, that kind of stuff?
that's where the real work comes in, right? Remember when our YouTube Bhadra was talking about having a totem or a mantra? He even joked about needing something physical to remind him to stay present, not get swept away by his own thoughts.
Like a mental reset button.
Exactly. It's about finding tools, developing practices that bring us back to that awareness when we inevitably drift off into that stream of thoughts and feelings. Could be a simple phrase you repeat, a breathing exercise, anything that reminds you to pause and observe instead of just reacting.
That makes me think about our philosophical Bhadra, the one from the text. Even though we only have that short excerpt, it feels like they're engaged in that same kind of practice. Constantly questioning, examining their own thoughts, trying to dig deeper. They're not just along for the ride, they're actively engaging with their own minds.
Absolutely. You've hit on a really important point here. Both Bhadras, even with their totally different styles, they're both urging us to be active participants in our own mental worlds. Not just letting our thoughts run wild, but really engaging with them, shaping them.
Yeah, like we have a choice. Get swept away by the current, or learn to navigate those waters. Be more intentional, more aware.
Exactly. And the more we practice that awareness, the more we realize we have agency. We have a choice in how we react to the world. And in that space of conscious choice, that's where we can really grow, be more creative, connect with others in a meaningful way.
Makes you wonder how much of our lives we spend on autopilot just reacting compared to how much we actually choose?
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
And it leads us to a whole other layer of this whole exploration. We've been so focused on the how of questioning, but what about the what? What if the complete text, the one our philosophical Bhadra comes from, what if it's not about giving us concrete answers? What if it's about challenging us to go on our own journeys of questioning?
Ooh, no, that's interesting. Like a meta-Bhadra moment, right? Questioning the very act of questioning. Yeah, it's wild. Like that text, it's not giving us answers. It's holding up a mirror and saying, hey, what are you curious about?
Exactly. Maybe the most important thing we can take from both these Bhadras is this: real understanding. It's not about someone just handing you answers. It's about being curious, asking questions, being willing to really look inward.
Yeah, and it's cool how they both embody that in their own ways, right? YouTube Bhadra's like, hey, let's get real about our thoughts, have some fun with it. And then you've got philosophical Bhadra diving deep into the mysteries of consciousness.
Totally. Different approaches, but the same core message. Your mind is powerful. Don't just let it happen to you. Explore it, try to understand it. You can actually shape it.
Seriously, imagine if we all did that, just lived with that kind of awareness. Our relationships, our work, even just walking down the street.
Right. It's like a challenge to break free from those old patterns, those automatic reactions. What if we hit pause more often, paid attention to what we were thinking and feeling, then chose how to respond?
It's like rewriting the script of your life, going from reacting without thinking to actually creating your own experience.
Exactly. And that's what these Bhadras are showing us, I think. We have the power to choose. We can become the authors of our own lives.
So well said. And speaking of journeys, our YouTube Bhadra, remember how he was talking about the whole nihilist versus sage thing? He's like, more on that in another video, huh? Now I'm seriously curious, like, where's he going with that?
Right. Always another layer to peel back, something new to discover about what it means to be human. That's the beauty of these deep dives. It's not about reaching the finish line. It's about being on the journey.
Totally. It's about asking those big questions, considering different perspectives, and hey, if we can have a few laughs along the way, like our YouTube Budra, even better. So we've covered a lot of ground today. From mindfulness practices to free will, we've been all over the map. Two very different people, both calling themselves Hadra the Inquisitor, both pushing us to connect with our own minds in a deeper way. But before we wrap up, gotta ask, we haven't really touched on this, but it's been there all along. That name, Hadra, what is it about that name? Why does it seem to attract these deep thinkers, these explorers of consciousness? Pure coincidence? Or is there something more to it? Something about the name itself that just resonates with this whole pursuit of knowledge and understanding? We'll leave you to ponder that one. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those questions coming.